Welcome to Cruise News, your daily update on everything happening at sea. Visit cruisenews.io to see today's stories and sign up for email alerts. Let's unpack this. Today we are looking at the three massive, interconnected forces actively reshaping the cruise industry right before our eyes.
Yeah, it's really a fascinating time to analyze this industry.
Yeah, it really is. We're exploring how cruising is being squeezed and stretched simultaneously by sudden geopolitical shifts, absolute boomtown demand in key home ports, and the intense growing pressure from local destinations to manage the sheer footprint of all those ships.
Right. If you think about what it takes to, run a global cruise line right now, it is basically a masterclass in extreme high-stakes multitasking.
Oh, absolutely.
On one side of the globe, operations teams are literally having to balance rerouting a billion-dollar asset out of a conflict zone on a moment's notice. And then the very next day, those same executives are pivoting to manage record-breaking passenger logistics in North America.
Well, so playing diplomat.
Great. Exactly, acting as diplomats to maintain local community relations in European cities that are just feeling entirely overwhelmed.
And there is absolutely no better example of that sudden geopolitical squeeze than what is unfolding right now in the Arabian Gulf. Aroya Cruises has just officially suspended and canceled the entirety of its remaining 2026 Arabian Gulf season.
A whole thing.
Yeah, the whole thing. We are talking about voyages that were scheduled to run all the way into early May of 2026, just completely wiped off the board with zero notice.
Right, and when we look at the why behind this, it really highlights the harsh operational reality of the region today. It is not just a simple matter of a cruise ship physically avoiding a specific port of call.
Right, it's much bigger than that.
It is. It's about the reality of escalating regional conflict in Iran and the neighboring areas and how that geopolitical tension severely ripples out into the logistics of moving thousands of people. The operational constraints are just incredibly severe right now.
Because you've got the airspace issues.
Exactly. You have airspace limitations that make flying passengers in and out for embarkation an absolute nightmare for flight planners. Plus, there are extreme route sensitivities, particularly regarding any maritime transits connected to the Strait of Hormuz.
Which is such a massive choke point.
It is a critical, narrow passage linking the Gulf ports to the open ocean, and right now, navigating a commercial passenger vessel through it is just viewed as an unacceptable risk.
Wait, so when you have a disruption like that, what actually happens to the people already on vacation? Because all the Aroya guests who are currently on board were safely disembarked in Dubai on March 7th. But the contrast in how different brands handle a sudden disruption like this is what really stands out to me.
The contrast is stark.
Right, because during this exact same disruption period, a much larger rival like MSC Cruises actually stepped in and fully arranged the flights for their stranded passengers. Aroya passengers, on the other hand, were required to manage their own onward travel arrangements.
Yeah, they were.
Just relying entirely on guidance and assistance from the ship's onboard support team. Are you telling me Aroya essentially just told their passengers to figure out their own flights home during a regional airspace crisis?
Essentially, yes.
How does a brand new cruise line survive that kind of PR nightmare right out of the gate?
It is an incredibly dangerous position for a brand to be in, especially a new one. Asking a passenger who suddenly finds themselves standing on a dock in Dubai to source their own international flight home during a period of heavily restricted airspace when commercial airlines are already scrambling is a massive undertaking.
I can't even imagine the stress.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, this isn't just an isolated incident for Aroya. This broader Gulf halt has effectively paralyzed the entire region's cruise sector for the moment. The disruption has left multiple massive ships essentially parked at Gulf ports across Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and Doha.
They're sitting there.
Operators are just sitting there scrambling to evaluate the daily security conditions.
It's a complete cascade of cancellations. Celestial Cruises had to cancel their late March sailings for the Celestial Discovery.
Right.
And now they're just finalizing arrangements to reposition that ship out of the area entirely, heading toward its Mediterranean season out of Athens. Then you have TUI Cruises.
They took a huge hit, too.
Yeah, they had to cancel a whole set of early March departures for both the Mein Schiff 4 and the Mein Schiff 5. And they've been fighting those exact limited float options we just talked about while trying to organize return travel for their guests.
It's a logistical nightmare.
And MSC Cruises. They canceled a scheduled regional departure for the MSC Euribia. And that massive ship is currently just docked in Dubai, waiting in limbo.
It really is a staggering amount of hardware sitting idle. And what's fascinating here is the bitter irony and, frankly, the incredibly high stakes for Aroya Cruises specifically. This wasn't just another seasonal deployment for them.
No, this was supposed to be the big moment.
This was meant to be their grand debut. This was Aroya's inaugural Gulf season. They literally just launched this brand in late February. They had crafted this beautiful mix of itineraries designed around Dubai, Doha, and Oman.
Even tailoring specific sailings to align with local culture, like dedicated Eid celebrations.
Exactly. And now that momentum is just completely stalled.
And the ship they are using has a really interesting history. It was originally built back in 2016 for Genting Hong Kong, and now it's just sitting alongside in Dubai until further notice.
Yeah.
But why does the fact that it was built for Genting matter so much in this context?
Well, they are using a ship originally built in 2016 for Genting Hong Kong, and that's a fascinating detail because it means Saudi Arabia isn't just building ships from scratch. Building a mega ship takes 3 to 5 years in a shipyard.
Which they don't want to wait for.
Right. Instead, Saudi Arabia is acquiring massive pre-existing luxury assets to rapidly accelerate their timeline. They want to establish a homegrown cruise brand and turn the region into a major tourism hub overnight.
So they bought a ready-made asset.
But because they bought a pre-existing asset, the money is already spent. The ship is already crewed. So having it sit idle in Dubai makes this current delay phenomenally expensive. This is a massive stress test for Saudi Arabia's broader ambitions.
Do they have a backup plan for the ship?
The current hope is that the vessel can safely relocate to Jeddah in May, ahead of some Red Sea itineraries, and eventually make it safely to Istanbul by June to home port for the summer season. But it just proves how quickly unpredictable geopolitical shifts can entirely upend years of strategic planning.
Okay, so while the Gulf is essentially hitting the brakes to deal with geopolitics, here's where it gets really interesting. The Pacific Northwest is struggling with the exact opposite problem. They're moving way too fast. Vancouver is staring down an absolute tidal wave of demand right now.
The contrast is truly night and day. You look at the Port of Vancouver, and they're forecasting a staggering, record-breaking 2026 cruise season at Canada Place.
The numbers are wild.
They really are. They are currently preparing for nearly 360 cruise calls and over 1.4 million passengers to pass through that terminal. To put that scale into perspective, that is a 19% jump from last year's passenger visits.
Wow.
And it's even 5% above the previous all-time record set in 2024. The economic impact of this volume is massive. It is expected to inject over $1 billion directly into the local economy.
$1 billion.
Yeah.
That is incredible. And you can clearly see the mechanics of that growth when you look at specific brand movements. Disney Cruise Line, for example, is expanding its footprint in Vancouver massively this year.
Huge expansion.
For the very first time ever, they are going to be home porting 2 different ships at Canada Place simultaneously, the Disney Wonder and the Disney Magic. But the logistics to just get a ship like the Disney Wonder into position is wild. How does a brand pull off that kind of global movement just to meet seasonal demand?
It is the ultimate global repositioning dance, and the logistics are staggering. Take the Disney Wonder, as you mentioned. Before it even begins its Alaska season in May, it has to complete a massive global journey.
Where did it even start?
It just finished up a winter season sailing all the way down in Australia and New Zealand. From there, it hopped through the South Pacific, made its way to the U.S. West Coast for some sailings out of San Diego, and now it is finally arriving in Vancouver to kick off the season.
That is quite the commute.
Only after all of that does it settle into a routine of weekly Alaska runs, hitting those classic ports like Juneau, Skagway, and Ketchikan.
But with all this explosive growth and 1.4 million passengers descending on Canada Place, it creates a perfect tourism storm for the city of Vancouver itself. Because it's not just the cruisers. If you thought booking a decent hotel room in Vancouver was tough on a normal Tuesday, try doing it when 1 million cruise passengers are actively competing with global soccer fans. You might want to just pitch a tent in the terminal.
That is absolutely critical advice for anyone listening, because the peak cruise season is going to overlap directly with a major, massive event calendar in the city. Vancouver is hosting 7 FIFA World Cup matches this summer.
7 matches. That is a ton of people.
When you combine the massive influx of international soccer fans with 1.4 million cruise passengers, the demand for hotel rooms, restaurants, and local transport is going to be completely unprecedented. The city is going to be packed to the absolute brim. If you have a cruise booked out of Vancouver, you cannot wait to lock in your logistics.
Which brings us to the most pressing question facing the industry today. How do you actually handle 1.4 million people descending on a single waterfront without completely breaking the host city? That destination-level pressure is the third massive force shaping the industry today.
It is, without a doubt, the defining challenge for port cities right now. You cannot simply funnel that many people through a downtown corridor without creating immense friction unless you have highly advanced operational fixes in place.
And Vancouver has a tech solution for this.
They do. In Vancouver, they are turning heavily to technology to manage the physical flow of human beings. At Canada Place, they recently introduced facial biometrics for cruise boarding, and this isn't just some minor incremental upgrade. It has absolutely slashed U.S. border control processing times by 94%.
Let's actually do the math on that, because 94% is a huge claim. What does that actually look like for the passenger standing in line?
We are talking about dropping the wait times from roughly 3 minutes at a traditional passport kiosk down to under 10 seconds per average transaction.
In under 10 seconds.
Yes. When you multiply those saved minutes across 3,000 or 4,000 passengers disembarking a single ship, it is the difference between a terminal that flows smoothly into the city and a terminal that completely backs up into the streets, snarls local traffic, and severely infuriates the locals.
That is wild. But it's not just about managing the crowds of people. It's about managing the physical impact of the megaships themselves. Vancouver is also aggressively tackling emissions to ease that local friction, right?
Yes, and this is where massive infrastructure investments become so vital. The port is expanding its shore power capabilities at Canada Place, which is being funded in part by the Federal Green Shipping Corridors program. Construction starts this year, and when it's ready, it will allow even more ships to physically plug directly into British Columbia's hydro-powered electrical grid.
Rather than running their massive diesel engines while docked.
Exactly. The environmental math on this is incredibly significant. This capability prevents about 3,300 tons of greenhouse gases per season. To put that in everyday terms, that is the equivalent of taking 770 gasoline-powered cars completely off the road each year.
That's a huge local benefit.
And the cruise lines are ready for it. Over 80% of the ships calling in Vancouver in 2025 were already shore power enabled.
So Vancouver is managing the boom with lightning-fast biometrics and clean energy. But if we cross the Atlantic and look at the European approach, the pressure from local communities is even higher, and the tactics are shifting dramatically. It's less about just moving people faster and more about desperately securing the goodwill of the city through hyperlocal community relations and, increasingly, strict legislation.
That concept of securing goodwill is exactly what is driving the new strategy over at the Liverpool Cruise Port. They have launched a 2026 season-long partnership with Olsen Cruise Lines.
Right.
And what's fascinating here is that they aren't just focusing on bringing tourists to walk around and spend money. They are visibly, actively tying themselves to the daily survival and health of the local community.
They're really getting involved locally.
They are coordinating activities around awareness days like Women in Maritime Day and International Coastal Cleanup Day. But more importantly, they are funding highly visible local needs, providing public defibrillators for the community, directly supporting the Alder Hey Children's Hospital, and running projects to enhance health and safety across the port estate.
But why go to all that trouble? I mean, why is a cruise line buying defibrillators for a port city?
Because they are reading the writing on the wall. Liverpool is trying to secure what industry experts call a social license for growth. They know that if the local citizens view the cruise industry as purely extractive, just bringing crowds, noise, and congestion without giving anything meaningful back to the people who actually live there, the political tide will inevitably turn against them.
So they have to show value.
By deeply embedding themselves in the community's health and well-being, they are trying to prove their inherent value before they end up facing the severe hard caps that we're seeing enacted elsewhere across Europe.
And those hard caps are becoming a very restrictive reality for the industry. When you hear about an 8,000 passenger cap in Greece, it's easy to think of it as just a regulatory number on a page. But put yourself on the ground. That is the equivalent of 2 massive megaships. If your ship is a third one scheduled to arrive that day, your itinerary gets entirely rewritten. You go to sleep expecting Santorini and you wake up somewhere else entirely.
Exactly. And the domino effect of European restrictions over the last few years illustrates exactly what is at stake if a destination decides the cruise footprint has simply grown too large. Since 2021, Venice has outright banned large ocean-going vessels from entering the San Marco Basin and the Giudecca Canal.
They just push them out.
They forced ships to redirect to alternative industrial berths just to protect the Venetian lagoon from environmental degradation and intense overcrowding.
And it doesn't stop in Italy. We just mentioned Greece, where the Cyclades have implemented that strict daily cap of 8,000 cruise passenger landings alongside seasonal per-person fees that kicked in for 2025. Over in Spain, Barcelona, which is historically one of the biggest cruise hubs in the entire world, is actively reducing its port terminals and limiting the number of passengers that can be handled at any given time.
It's happening everywhere.
These aren't polite suggestions. These are hard legislative boundaries drawn by destinations saying, we have reached our absolute limit. Do not cross this line.
So what does this all mean for the future of how we actually visit these historic places?
Well, in Amsterdam, they are having a very different debate. They are arguing that maybe the megaships aren't the answer for these fragile ancient cities at all. Instead, proponents are pointing to river cruising as the ultimate managed tourism tool.
Which makes sense visually. You picture a massive 15-story ocean liner looming over historic architecture versus a low-profile riverboat. But does the economic math actually work out for the city? It is a highly compelling argument when you look at the scale and the revenue. The river cruise vessels they are talking about carry around 200 passengers. They don't overwhelm the historic city squares or clog up the narrow cobblestone streets the way a massive ocean liner dropping off 4,000 people all at once does.
That's a huge difference in footprint.
Yet despite their incredibly small size, these river cruises are contributing an estimated 221 million euros to Amsterdam's economy. They support roughly 365,000 hotel nights and sustain 2,000 local jobs. It provides immense economic value without straining the city's infrastructure or the patience of the locals. It is a model of tourism that aims to organically strengthen the community rather than just extract from it.
It's an incredible balancing act.
Oh.
When you look at all three of these forces together, the cruise industry is performing a high-wire routine every single day. They are dodging unpredictable, highly volatile geopolitical crises in the Middle East. They are managing billion-dollar surges in passenger demand in places like Vancouver, and all the while, they are literally having to negotiate their very right to exist and operate in historic port cities across Europe.
This raises an important question. As destinations get stricter, technology gets more advanced, and global security remains unpredictable, we are seeing an industry that can no longer just sell a vacation. They have to act as diplomats, tech innovators, and local philanthropists. It makes you wonder, a decade from now, will your cruise itinerary be dictated by where you actually want to go, or entirely by which cities are still willing to accept you?
Thanks for listening to Cruise News. Visit cruisenews.io to catch up on the latest updates and sign up for free email alerts.